Hello Jelly fans! Today I want to paint on the gel plate with watercolors and then print the negative space with acrylics. This is my A4 8 by 12 inch plate, and the color residue you see here is on the other side. I'm keeping the plastic sheet underneath on as I want to be able to turn the plate and register it later. These are the watercolors I want to use. A burnt sienna, a perylene maroon, which is really a very red tone, a VanDyk brown, an orange, and one lighter and one darker green. As usual, you can find all the materials I use in the info box below the video. Before I start, I decide against the perylene maroon because it's really too bright of a red. I'm starting with the burnt sienna, and I'm brushing it on the gel plate with a brush that is really a makeup brush. It has very soft artificial hair. And you can see it's kind of a bummer to get it spread out. You can also see that it's already beading because the watercolor, I didn't use any water on the brush, but the watercolor itself has some kind of water in it. And I'm starting to work the orange in it. I only chose colors that are resembling the fall, the autumn leaves, the foliage that you see in Maine, maybe. So I want to stay pretty much orangey, but with a little green and darker brown tones. So I'm also coming in with the green, the darker green, which is called a hooker's green, which I think is kind of funny for a color. Anyway, I want to have it more green and brown in the lower side and getting lighter upwards with orange and light brown. And you can see I managed to spread it out. The green actually works a little better. And finally, I will have to come in with water again, but I have to do that anyway to activate the paint to be able to print it. And the beading is part of this because I think it'll look like in fall when you have those leaves that are disintegrating slowly. I'm using a light green up here. And I'm spritzing on some water for the light green to spread out better. And I think I want a little bit more of light colors, so I'm actually adding a kind of yellow. It is a new Gamboge, it's called. Anyway, those colors will mix quite a bit in the end. Again, spritzing on some more water and going over all of the colors again. And before I print, I'm even using more water. And then I have to print quickly so that the beading does not get too big. Printing on Bristol paper, Fabriano Bristol paper that has 200 GSM, which is quite sturdy, and I like it for printing because it's very smooth. I can turn it around and see what it looks like. Looking good. And I'm pulling the print. And this is what I get as a result. I like it, but I can see the colors have merged too much for my liking. I would really like it a bit more color-wise, more interesting. But what I'm doing now is something you can do very well with watercolor. You just spritz the surface. It's important you have a spritz bottle with an adjustable nose, so you can control the spraying better. And I let this sink in for a little bit, and then I pick up the color underneath those water drops, and you can see that the yellow and the orange comes through. And this is a very nice effect for leaves and foliage. I'm very happy about this. And this you can actually do a lot better with watercolor. And also the watercolor, you can still, after it's dried, you can still work on the watercolor like this, no matter when. And that's why I want to do this first layer with watercolor. You can use watercolor paper as well, of course, but I personally like the Bristol a lot. Some more water. And some more dabbing off with the kitchen tissue. And I know this is gonna work as foliage just fine. I like the texture, love it. This is a handmade stencil I made from a photo. If you don't know that video I made about making your own stencils, here is the link. And I'm deciding to use this one again, which is really my favorite, and you've probably seen it many times before. I'm sorry, but it's so nice because it has a large foliage, and the more you will see in the end of that first layer of the interesting foliage effect. So to make that second layer, the negative printing, I'm using a golden open white. You know I love the golden open because they stay wet for so long. And I'm starting with a little bit of the phthalo blue in that left corner on top. In the end I find I mix it too much. I should have kept more of that white. But anyway, I'm trying to get a graded wash, if it's called that. And I'm picking that plate up, placing the first layer sheet and then the stencil on top. I'm trying to get the stencil where the most interesting parts are, because those are going to show the first layer. And then I register putting the plate on, and I really did a bad job about the registering here. As you can see, I have sides, but that's okay. Those are nice mistakes. And I let it sink in for a bit, and then I pull the print. And it's, oh God, I think I'm in love. I love this one. And this is my first try, so I'm very happy. But stay with me, it's gonna get even better. So now I want to pick up the blue color that is underneath the stencil, and I'm picking that up with a light brown paper. It's quite thin, so I'm not going to do that much to it, but I just want to see how it looks on brown paper. Blue and brown, always a great mix. I'm rubbing the paper quite strongly and then let it sit for a few minutes, and then I'm pulling that print. Maybe something for a collage. Now this is important because the next one is going to be in 2 layers. I need a second stencil. And I've put the stencil with the remaining blue underneath on a white paper. Left it on a little too long. But as you can see, it made the stencil marks. And I'm gonna cut this out. Well, actually I lost something there in the middle. So I'm still using the stencil to get the right shapes, especially in the middle of those leaves. And I'm drawing out the shapes then, filling in what had not printed. And then I'm cutting the whole thing out in a thicker paper. The first stencil I made on a printable Duralal sheet, which was great. Well, you can see that in my stencil video. But this one I'm probably going to use only one time, so it's okay if I make it in paper. I'm using a surgical knife in case you were wondering, but please be careful with these things. They were so sharp, I cut myself numerous times. So I got the second stencil ready. This time, before I put on the watercolor, I'm spritzing on water before, which was a good idea. And I'm more self-confident now, so I'm trying to keep the colors separately. You can also do this with acrylics, by the way. I just find the beading and the tones and what you can do with on the paper afterwards, I find it very useful to use watercolors. And I'm only using the lighter colors for this first layer because I have to make the second layer in a darker tone, but still with the matching colors. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So I'm pulling the first layer. You can see that that green didn't really dissolve very well, but that doesn't matter. And I'm doing the same thing again, spritzing, waiting for a bit, and then dabbing off the dots. Beautiful. And I'm sorry about that reflection there. That's from my filming light. Preparing the second layer. I'm using the darker tones now, the VanDyk brown, the Hooker's green, but also a little bit of the orange to go with the first layer. Spritzing water on afterwards. Ha, what a mess this is. Ooh, it looks awful. But it's gonna be okay. I'm putting that plate aside, placing on the first layer page. The color really has come through the page. That's strange. Anyways, placing the stencil on. I'm trying to register it a little better so that the leaves are not cut off down there. And registering, or sort of registering, the plate. Pressing it on, turning it around, and rubbing in from the other side. Again, the rim didn't print. Oh, look here, you can see the stencil through it. So it's a little bit misregistered again, which adds to the interest, I think. So this is the first layer, and that darker brown is gonna be another foliage that is more in the back. And it's because it's just brown, I'm doing the dabbing effects here too. And a little bit of the green, the light green comes through it. Still never want to waste anything. So I'm also taking that ghost print that the stencil left there with the brown paper. And color-wise, this actually looks better than the second dark layer I made. And I wonder why. It's nice, but today I'm not doing anything further with this. And now for the negative printing of the sky. Working with the golden open acrylics again. White and a little bit of blue in the corner. Brayering that out for a while. I like this one better actually. So now I have to protect the first layer foliage, And now I'm coming in with a new cutout thing. It doesn't really matter if it's the same or so, because it's gonna be in different places. I actually cut it apart, as you can see, to be more free where to place the foliage. So placing the gel plate on, turning it around, rubbing in. The bag looks horrible. Yes, this is the reveal, and I love it, love it, love it. Even better than the first one. Has some nice sense of depth through the second layer. And now I'm starting to work out my main prints for today. The first one, that really surprised me, how well the foliage feel is transported here. I'm using a VanDyk brown of my trusty Polychromos pencils. And I'm basically just putting in some shadows, that's all. Just put them, if you imagine the sun is coming as usual from the top left, I'm making the shadows on the right and on the lower part of the leaf. And this is where I stopped. Of course, you don't have to do the shadow thing. It's just my personal liking, and I could have left it just like that before, leave it rough. Still don't want to waste a ghost print, so I'm going to print over this first blue ghost print I made. And for that, as a pickup color, I'm using not a color, but a medium. This is a matte medium. And I'm brayering it on, not pushing so hard with the brayer so that it doesn't dissolve somehow. Same thing, registering, turning it around. And voila. I don't know what this is, but with a little bit of working out, I can make this, turn this into a beauty, I think. But I'm not doing that today. And now I'm working out the 2-layer one. Now I'm speeding this up because it's basically just the same, just adding some shadows, even to the darker foliage in the back. It's very subtle, but I think it still works. And that's why I'm using a black pencil to be even darker than the darker layer. And this is what it's like. And I'm very, very happy with today's session. And I hope you liked it too, and feel inspired to try something similar. Just remember, watercolor and acrylics, they make a wonderful match. I'll see you next week. Bye.